Okay, this is the second of what I initially planned would be 4 videos. I might turn it into more because I'm going to break them up into smaller pieces. These chunks are a bit larger than I think are comfortable to watch. But this is the second one in this series on the 8 orders of being, a cognitive map for understanding the nature of reality. The first one, just to kind of rehash a little bit here, we talked about cognitive maps and how these maps structure information for us so that we can really understand the complex nature of things, which allows us to make better decisions, both in terms of understanding what it is that's happening right now, in terms of how do I make meaning of this current event, and then what can I do about it? What strategies are available to me to actually move me towards what it is that I need? But also understanding that any cognitive map that we have is tentative, it's partial, it doesn't take everything into account. And so we need to be able to hold these maps lightly. We don't want to be clinging to a particular way of thinking that is no longer working. Sometimes we have ways of thinking about things that don't work, but we cling to them anyway. We call those cognitive distortions. So we want to understand that cognitive maps are essential for us to be able to relate to reality, but that doesn't mean that oh, here we go. That doesn't mean that we can't let go of them when they are no longer connecting us to what is true. The whole point here is to be as connected as possible to what is actually true. So in order to connect with what is true, we're going to look at 3 primary disciplines for discovering reality. These are ways that humans have over time found to be able to say, okay, well, this is what's really going on here, to make sense of things. So we talk about the cognitive maps as a way of sense making. How do I make sense of this? And then in particular, when some event happens, what does this mean? We use these for both of these. But we're going to use the wisdom that has come to us through the ages and what is now sort of the pinnacle of our understanding of how it is that things can be. So we're going to look at science, philosophy, and theology. The cutting edge of science now is something that is sometimes referred to as the new science. And this is not just gathering new facts. This is not just more data. It's actually a new way of understanding the world. It's a new worldview. We see the world as alive, evolving, and interrelated. It is a worldview that challenges strict materialism. Everything is not just matter. There are more things to it. To consider the role of mind, meaning, and creativity in the universe. We can actually understand that we are creating the universe by what we expect to see. And do we think how it is that we approach health, education, ecology, economics, and even spirituality? So this is a new way of thinking about the smallest things, the largest things, and the very nature of being itself. So we have a new science that this developed over the last 100 years. We also have a new understanding of theology. Now, this is not religion per se. This is how it is that we understand the nature of our relationship as beings in the world to ultimate issues, purpose. What is our role in life? What issues of literally of life and death? And all of the world religions now have a kind of progressive theological expression to them, which appreciate all of the major religions, is welcoming science as a source of information. It affirms that spirituality is paradoxical in its nature. Uncertainty is a part of our relationship with the world. Is far more concerned with social justice, and it invites interpretations of Scripture that are not literal but rather metaphorical. So we have the new science, we have progressive theology, but we also have now integral philosophy. The whole concept of integral philosophy is that it includes all other worldviews as much as possible into a coherent whole. It is holistic. It is developmental insofar as that it sees things arise in a process. It aims to connect all of the valid pieces of human knowledge into a more complete understanding of reality, self, and society. So it honors multiple disciplines, it understands multiple dimensions, it tracks development over multiple lines, and it is non-dualistic, seeing reality is fundamentally interconnected. Now let's look at this just a little bit here. So as we understand the structure of the structure and the process of reality, we're looking here not just at what is the structure? Where do we hang what we understand to be the nature of what is real? What is sort of the framework for it? We also notice that as we understand more and more what is real, that part of what is real is actually a set of processes. That reality is itself a dynamic thing. It is continually changing. Now, whether the processes themselves are changing or whether it's just the arising that we experience is changing is not entirely clear, because we can't really discover what is reality. We can only approach it. And so we're looking both at the structure and the process, and we're doing it by looking at 4 different aspects of reality: distinctions, dimensions, development, and dialectics. And yes, I like alliteration. So it kind of helps me be able to remember these, because they are 4 interrelated things. Distinctions and dimensions are much more about structure. Development and dialectics are more about process. So distinctions. Everything is unique. There are no 2 things that are exactly alike. And this diversity of expression in the created world is actually a feature, not a bug. This helps in the whole process of evolution, for example, is the fact that that things are different. But the distinctions that we're talking about here are simply the matter of being able to say this is different from that. And this is an essential part of how we understand our relationship with the world. I go out to weed the garden, which is a weed and which is the plant that I'm trying to grow. Can I distinguish between them? So there are all kinds of ways that we make distinctions as a way of understanding the nature of reality. And one of the things that we make distinctions about, one of the ways that we make distinctions, let me put it this way, is by creating dualities. So there's light and there's dark, there's up and there's down, there's in and there's out. And so we pair 2 apparently opposite things in order to make sense of the world. One of the primary ones that we make, and we're going to come back to this when we talk about the 8 orders of self, is that one of the things that we distinguish is me from you. I discover fairly early in infancy that I am not the world around me. I develop what is called a separate self sense. I make a distinction. But we can get caught up into these distinctions as though they are dualities, as though they're my friends and they are my enemies, and they are static in that way. People who are my friends will always be my friends. People who are my enemies will always be my enemies. And we don't see that line, that category, as moving. Non-duality recognizes that everything is connected to everything everywhere all the time. And so duality is real, but so is non-duality. And this is one of the fundamental paradoxes that we're going to have to embrace when we move to a more integral understanding of reality. Okay. So one of the distinctions that we make is about the boundaries of systems. Now, the boundary of the system that is me, that's pretty straightforward. I'm contained within this bag of skin. And actually, as we develop our understanding of ourselves, we discover that that's not quite that clear, that the boundary around what I understand to be myself, it may be not connected specifically with my physical body. But we decide what is the boundary around this system. If I'm going to study the ecology of a pond, am I going to include the wheat field that's next to it? If I'm going to study weather, what is the area in which I am studying what's happening within the atmosphere? What are the boundaries around these systems? How do I construct them? How do we construct boundaries around a nation? What are our national borders? How do we construct boundaries around the people who live in who's a citizen and who is not a citizen? So we continue to be about this business of trying to create boundaries around systems in order to make sense of things, so we can see how some systems are similar to others and how it is that these systems can interact with each other. So this is one of the distinctions that we are making as we structure or attempt to build an understanding of the structure of reality. All right, now, the second category is that systems have, any system has certain dimensions or are layered in certain ways. We see reality arising in different forms to build various kinds of complex structures. So we're going to define these as 4 dimensions, layers, realms, domains. We're going to talk about them in different ways, but we recognize that they all coexist all the time, everywhere. And these 4, the most basic one is the material or the personal, and this is the layer of reality, the domain of being that takes up matter. This is the most easily described and related to because it's the densest. A second realm, domain, layer is relational or interpersonal. There's relationships between the objects, the material objects or the persons now have relationships, and those relationships themselves have qualities. And so within those relationships, we build things like language, cooperation, accountability. There's all kinds of things that arise within the relational layer. But we find that those are impacted by what's happening in the interior level. That is, the interiority of anything. Certainly, the interior that's most available to us is our own. But we can imagine that everything has some kind of interior. We notice that even plants have a capacity to know what's going on around them, and so somehow they make a decision about how they will grow. And the 4th layer is the spiritual or the transpersonal. And this is the realm in which everything is connected to everything, everywhere, all the time. So these are the 4 dimensions. This is a kind of a fundamental structure in our map when we're looking at the various dimensions of being. Okay, we're moving on now to development. Development is a process by which things grow. And development happens through stages of increasing complexity. Everything that grows through stages. An insect goes from an egg to a larva to a pupa to an adult. Trees go from seeds to seedlings to saplings to adult trees. Everything grows through stages of development, and each stage is increasingly complex. And these are natural systems that show how complexity increases over time, and this is how evolution happens. So we can think of this as particular organisms, but it's also true for organizations like who am I personally, or who are the communities of which I am a part. These organisms and organizations themselves change. So a family evolves over time, and it continues to recreate itself. This is kind of as an organic process. Okay, now, one of the qualities of development is that transformation happens from one stage to a next. And transformation is going to be a really central part of how we understand this map of the 8 orders. Because transformation is not just getting bigger, it's getting different in a way that's is qualitatively different. It is the emergence of new capacity. It's development of new perspectives. And so this transformation is something that happens as a form of emergence. So emergence is one of the things that we're going to talk about here as well. Emergence is an experience of the law of three. We'll talk a little bit about that. But it's something new arising at a higher level of complexity. All right. So the fourth category here is dialectic. And that is that change happens because of the presence of tension between different aspects of reality. So there are opposing forces. They interact in such a way as emergence appears. We see new things arising. And this is what drives evolution in a larger sense, and innovation even is the way businesses function. So philosophically, we know that there's the thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This is true, but no, this opposite thing is true, and so how do we put them together? The law of three is sometimes summarized as the affirming, the denying, and the reconciling. One of the guideposts that I use within Just Conflict is we look at a particular event. What is arising for me? What does it arouse in me? And what am I longing for? And when these three are held in tension, a new arises in a fourth dimension. So I want to just give you some examples of this here. So if I have fuel and heat and oxygen, I will have fire. Fire is at a different level of complexity than the component parts. If I don't have all three, if I take away any one of the three, heat, fuel, or oxygen, the fire will go out. If I want to go sailing, I need a sailboat, of course, but just having a well-constructed boat doesn't allow me to go sailing. I need a sail, and I need some wind in the sail. I need a keel and a rudder. That is, I need to have something that the boat can push against. And so the affirming is the wind, the denying is the keel, but the reconciling is the helmsman who holds them in a particular tension and allows the boat to actually go faster than the wind. Or in our relationships with each other, if we want to build trust, or maybe I notice that I don't have the trust that I'm looking for in my relationship with someone. Trust is built out of three component parts. It is an emergent property. It emerges when we know each other. We know what's going on with each other. We're transparent with what's going on. It's kind of cognitively, what is going on with you? Here's what's going on with me. But we also need to respect each other. That is, we value who the other is, and we feel valued by them. And the third piece is that we have to make choices that are considerate of each other's interests. What am I doing? Am I being accountable? Doesn't mean I'm doing what you want me to do. It means that I'm paying attention to how my behavior is impacting you. So when we have relationships that are characterized by mutual accountability, we respect each other, and we share what's going on with ourselves such that we have a level of intimacy, what that constructs for us is a capacity of trust. Okay, so we have distinctions, dimensions, development, and dialectics. The distinctions are themselves ways of dividing so that we have surfaces, so we can kind of see the surface of things. The dimensions are that there are multiple layers of things. Development is a process by which we move to greater and greater complexity. And development happens because the dialectics, the tension between various oppositional forces, are resolved into a new way of being. And so these are the fundamental structures that we know, we discover can arise for us. So these are component parts of the map, of the cognitive map, of the 8 orders of being. So next what we're going to look at is an application of these 8 orders for how it is that we encounter the world, by looking first of all at the graphic of the map itself, because it really helps to have something that you can kind of see, so you see, oh, here's the relationship between these things. So that'll be the third video coming up soon. Thanks for watching.